By the next morning, my phone would show 27 missed calls. That part came later. What started it was a chair. It happened at the Christmas table, in my son's house, the one where I had been using my married last name for years. I did not know yet that I would take that name back. I only knew that something small and ordinary was about to turn sharp. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Meredith Klein, 61. I arrived early, like I always do, not because anyone asked, but because I was raised to help set the table if I planned to eat at it. I brought a pie, hung my coat, and stepped into the rhythm I had learned over time. Coffee brewed, plates came out. No one stopped me. I had helped more than most people remembered. A down payment when my son and his wife were short. Utilities co-signed when they moved too fast. Emergency loans when timing mattered more than pride. I never announced those things. I believed support worked best when it stayed quiet. The chair at the head of the table had become mine the same way. Not by demand, not by ceremony. It was simply where I sat. Year after year, because I hosted more than I was hosted. Because habits form when no one objects. Claire was already adjusting the place settings. She moved forks a fraction of an inch, straightened napkins, then paused. Her eyes went to the chair, not to me, to the chair. I noticed because she looked at it twice. My son passed behind her, arms full, avoiding nothing and addressing nothing. The house hummed with preparation, and that hum felt like safety. I remember thinking that everything looked normal enough to trust. I reached for the back of the chair, ready to pull it out as I always had. Claire's hand lifted slightly, not yet stopping me, just hovering there. She glanced at the chair again, then finally at me. Her expression was calm, prepared. That was the moment I understood I was about to be corrected, not quietly, and not by accident. The plates were already on the table when I reached for the chair. My fingers wrapped around the back the way they always had. Steady, familiar. I pulled it out just enough to step in. Stop. Claire's voice cut cleanly through the room. Not sharp, not raised. Calm enough to make everyone listen. That seat isn't yours. She went on, standing now, hands resting lightly on the table. You don't belong here. The words landed without urgency, which somehow made them heavier. No one laughed. No one shifted to soften it. I straightened, still holding the chair. Claire, I started, keeping my tone even. I've always sat. She lifted her chin, just a fraction. That was before what hung there, unanswered. Then she added the part that changed everything, and that last name. Her eyes stayed on mine. Your married name isn't just yours anymore. The room went quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Forks hovered. Someone cleared their throat and stopped. I waited for my son to step in, to say my name the way he used to when he was younger and needed something fixed. I looked at Ethan. He didn't meet my eyes. His attention dropped to the table, then to his hands, busy with nothing. I'm not trying to cause a scene, Claire continued, voice still level. I just think things should be clear. Clear, as if this were housekeeping. My hand slid off the chair. I felt the space where it should have been behind my knees, the absence of it louder than any shout. I noticed then how carefully she had chosen the moment. Everyone seated, everyone watching. No room to move without being seen. I waited for someone to object, for a sister-in-law to frown, for Ethan to say, "That's not okay." The silence stretched, not accidental anymore. Claire exhaled slowly, as if relieved. "Thank you," she murmured. Not to me, but to the room. I stood there, empty-handed, realizing the correction wasn't about furniture. It was about position. and it had been approved long before she opened her mouth. I waited. Not long. Just long enough for someone to decide who I was in that room. Ethan shifted in his chair, the wood scraping softly. He opened his mouth, closed it, then reached for his glass as if thirst were suddenly urgent. Claire remained standing, composed, her hands folded like this had been rehearsed. Around us, people stared at plates, napkins, anything that wasn't my face. "I think we should just eat," someone muttered. It might have been Ethan's cousin. It might have been no one important. Either way, it landed like permission. That was when I understood Claire hadn't taken a risk. She'd taken a turn. "You don't speak that way unless you're sure the room will hold." I nodded once, mostly to myself. "All right," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. No one answered. No one needed to. I stepped back from the table. My coat was still on the hook by the door. I took it down, slipped my arms through, moved slowly so no one could accuse me of making a scene. Ethan finally looked up then, eyes uncertain. "Mom?" he began. I paused, giving him space to finish. He didn't. "I'm heading home," I told the room. Not an announcement, a courtesy. The drive felt longer than it was. The engine idled while my hands rested on the wheel, fingers tight, then loosening. I wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later, once I knew where to put it. What I felt instead was replacement. A quiet, deliberate shift. Something I'd believed was solid had been exchanged without my consent, and everyone had watched it happen. I pulled away from the curb and didn't look back at the house. The silence inside that dining room followed me all the way home, and it spoke clearly enough. I didn't turn on the television when I got home. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table with my phone face down, letting the quiet settle into something usable. Her words replayed, steady and precise. "That last name isn't yours either." I opened the folder I keep for paperwork. I hadn't touched it in months, but I knew exactly where it was. Inside were copies I'd kept out of habit, not fear, a co-signed credit line from years back. My married last name printed neatly beside my signature. An emergency repair loan when Ethan and Claire's furnace failed in January. My name listed as guarantor because my credit was clean and quick. Utilities transferred once during a rushed move. Insurance contact changed because I was the one who answered calls. Ethan had laughed then. "You're a lifesaver." He'd told me. Claire had nodded, grateful, distracted. I scrolled through messages, a reminder from the insurance office addressed to me by that last name. A bank notice sent because my profile was the primary contact. None of it felt wrong at the time. I believed help was what families did. The memory shifted. Claire's calm voice. The timing. The certainty. She hadn't been correcting a social habit. She'd been drawing a line between public belonging and private access, between where I sat and what I signed. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan lit the screen. "Let's talk tomorrow." Things got tense. I set the phone back down without replying. Tense wasn't the word. Strategic was closer. I realized then that my name had become infrastructure. It carried weight where their decisions didn't. It absorbed risk quietly, the way I always had. Claire hadn't denied me ownership of a chair. She'd warned me that my identity was useful only when it stayed available. I closed the folder and rested my hands on top of it. Palms flat. Whatever happened next would start there, with ink and paper, not raised voices. I wasn't being erased. I was being leveraged. I was halfway through my tea when my phone vibrated against the table. One short buzz, then another. Not a call, an alert. Profile update pending. Verification required. I stared at the screen, waiting for recognition to kick in. It didn't. I hadn't updated anything. I hadn't logged in. I hadn't touched my account since the week before. I opened the banking app. My thumb slower now. A second message followed. Polite and automated. Unusual activity detected. Please confirm changes. My chest tightened. Not panic yet. Something colder. I tapped through my records. Contact details. Authorization history. Everything looked mostly familiar, until it didn't. A bank profile update request had been started earlier that evening. Not completed, just enough to exist. A verification ping waiting for approval under my name. I checked the timestamp. It lined up too neatly with dinner. I called the credit union's after-hours line. A recorded voice guided me through options until a live representative came on, her tone careful and professional. "I'm seeing a pending profile action," she explained. "Nothing finalized. We flagged it because it didn't match your usual access pattern. I didn't initiate anything," I replied. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. That's why it paused. She continued. "No funds moved. No accounts opened, but someone knew where to start, knew enough to try." I thanked her and ended the call. The room felt smaller. Not from fear, but from understanding. Claire's timing wasn't emotional. It was logistical. You don't challenge a name at the table unless you're already touching it elsewhere. Another message appeared. Ethan this time. "Can we talk tonight? Claire's upset." Upset? I almost smiled. I set the phone down and didn't answer. Whatever they were trying to adjust, whatever assumption they'd made about my availability, it had reached just far enough to trip an alarm, not damage. A warning. I rinsed my cup and dried it carefully. The insult hadn't come first. The attempt had. Dinner was only the confirmation. I called the credit union just after 6, before the day could gather witnesses. The woman who answered introduced herself as Marisol, her voice calm in the way people learn when money is involved. "I need to separate my financial identity," I told her. "Fully?" She didn't rush me. "I'll need to verify a few things." We went step by step. She pulled up my profile, read back the places where my name appeared beyond my own accounts. Guarantees, secondary access, emergency authorizations that had been added during moments I remembered as help, not risk. "I want to withdraw from every guarantee tied to my name," I said, effective immediately. There was a pause, brief and professional. "That will freeze any dependent activity until new arrangements are made." "I understand." "And name-based access." "Locked," I replied. "No changes without me present." She typed while I waited. I could hear it, the quiet clicking, like something being sealed. "We can initiate a separation file," she continued, "that limits future exposure and documents intent." "Please do." She confirmed my date of birth, my address, my voice. Then she read the list again, shorter now. My name stood alone where it belonged. "This isn't retaliation," I told her, surprising myself by how certain I sounded. "It's correction." "I hear that." Marisol answered. "We see it more often than people think." When the call ended, I sat with my hands folded, breathing evenly. The decision felt clean. No raised voices, no speeches rehearsed in the mirror, just lines drawn where they should have been drawn years ago. I opened my phone and typed a message to Ethan, then erased it. Explanation could wait. Action couldn't. I thought of the chair, how easily it had been taken from me once someone decided it wasn't mine. Names work the same way when you let them. They become furniture, useful, movable. I logged into my accounts one last time to confirm the changes. Everything held. Everything stopped where it should. If my name wasn't mine at their table, it wouldn't be theirs on paper either. I closed the app and set the phone down. Whatever came next would come with limits. For the first time in years, those limits were mine. I woke to the phone vibrating against the nightstand, then vibrating again, then not stopping at all. I let it go until the sound broke into silence on its own. When I picked it up, The screen told the story before any voice could. 27 missed calls. Ethan's name appeared the most. Claire's followed close behind. 2 numbers I didn't recognize blinked at the bottom. Local, but unfamiliar. I set the phone down, stood, and made coffee the way I always do, careful and unhurried. The first message came through while the water heated. Please call me. No punctuation. The second arrived seconds later. Something's wrong with the account. Another buzz. Claire this time. We can't access anything. This has to be a mistake. I checked my banking app. Not because I doubted the changes, but because I wanted to see the order they'd created. All dependent transactions on my accounts paused. Authorization requests flagged. A scheduled home repair payment was marked pending. A personal loan listed for review. My name removed from its support line. The phone rang again. I answered it and set it face down on the counter, letting it ring until it stopped. I listened to the messages one by one. The progression almost neat. Confusion first, then irritation, then a note of fear no one bothered to hide. Ethan's voice cracked on the third attempt. Mom, I need you to call me back. We can't even schedule the repair. They're telling us we need you. Claire's followed. Tighter. This is really inconvenient. You didn't have to do it like this. Inconvenient. Not wrong. Not inappropriate. Just inconvenient. The unknown number left a clipped message. A man introduced himself from the credit union, professional and cautious. We're trying to confirm next steps now that the guarantor has been removed. Guarantor. The word landed cleanly. I set the phone down and took my coffee to the table. The calls kept coming. I let them stack. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Whatever they needed from me had already been taken back, line by line. With permission, I'd finally learned to give myself. I answered Ethan's call on the 5th ring. I didn't greet him. What did you do? His voice came through tight, breath already ahead of thought. Everything's locked. The repair company won't schedule. The bank keeps asking for you. I corrected my records. I replied, that's all. There was a sharp exhale on the other end. You didn't have to do it like this. Like what? I asked, keeping my voice level. Claire's voice slid in before he could respond. She must have been right there. This is being blown out of proportion. Last night was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I repeated, you took it personally. She added, tone smoothing, practiced. No one meant to make you feel excluded. I leaned back against the counter and closed my eyes. You told me I didn't belong. You told me my last name wasn't mine. That was about boundaries, she replied quickly. You know how stressed things have been. We were just trying to reset expectations. Reset. As if they were trying to adjust expectations instead of respecting boundaries. Ethan cut in, voice lower now. Mom, we're in a bind. They're asking for documentation we don't have. Can you just reverse it until we sort this out? There's nothing to sort, I answered. I removed myself. Claire laughed once, short and incredulous. You can't just disappear like that. We relied on you. The word landed harder than the insult had. Relied. Not respected, madame. Not included. Relied. So that's what this is. I said, access. Silence followed. Brief but telling. Ethan spoke again, softer. We assumed you'd calm down. I'm calm. I told him. I'm also done pretending this was an accident. Claire's voice sharpened. You're punishing us. No, I replied. I'm opting out. The line went quiet again. Not disconnected, just empty. I ended the call myself and set the phone down. The pattern finally stood still long enough to see. They hadn't called to apologize. They'd called to restore what they'd lost. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to give it back. Ethan called again that afternoon. I let it ring twice before answering. They're telling us nothing can move forward, he began. Skipping any pretense. If you could just undo what you did, even temporarily, I won't. I replied. The word hung there. Simple and finished. A pause followed. Longer this time. Mom, we didn't think it would go this far. It went exactly as far as it needed to. I answered. Claire's voice entered again. Sharper now. You're being unreasonable. Families don't cut each other off over one dinner. This wasn't one dinner, I said. It was a pattern you felt comfortable saying out loud. Ethan inhaled slowly. We thought you'd cool off. He admitted. You always do. There it was. Not cruelty. Certainty. I'm not upset. I told him. I'm finished. Claire scoffed. So you're just walking away. I'm standing still, I corrected. You're the ones reaching. Another stretch of silence followed, heavier than the last. Ethan tried once more. Voice quieter, almost pleading. We can talk about this in person. We can fix it. There's nothing broken on my end, I replied. I won't restore access. I won't co-sign. I won't be the safety net you forget exists until you need it. Claire muttered something under her breath. I didn't ask her to repeat it. I love you, Ethan said. Finally. I know. I answered. That doesn't change what I'm choosing. I ended the call before the conversation could circle back into bargaining. The phone went still in my hand. No relief washed over me. No rush of victory. What I felt instead was space. Clean, quiet space where explanations used to live. I set the phone down and realized that peace hadn't come from fixing anything at all. It had come from closing the door they expected to stay open. I spent the afternoon updating what needed to be updated identification, accounts, and records that now reflected only me, not the assumed access others had. Each confirmation email landed quietly, no drama attached. My name stood alone where it belonged, clean and unshared. Ethan texted once more while I worked. We're still your family. I read it, let it sit, then typed back. I know who I am. I didn't wait for a response. That evening, I reheated leftovers and ate at my own table. No place cards. No hierarchy. The chair I chose felt right because it didn't need permission. I wasn't lonely. I was settled. There's a difference people don't learn until they stop explaining themselves. Later, I made tea and reviewed the day the way I always have without rewriting it to make anyone else comfortable. What happened at that table hadn't been about furniture. It had been about access, about who gets to use your name, your credit, your patience, and call it love. Here's the lesson I carried forward. Respect isn't something you negotiate after it's withdrawn. It's something you protect before it's spent. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're clarity. She kicked me out of a chair. I took back my last name, and I finally knew where I belonged. If this story resonated, tap like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories about dignity, boundaries, and finding your footing again.